J. Krishnamurti proved time and time again that he is the most radical philosopher of our time. As one of the most enigmatic thinkers in history, he was once chosen to be the world teacher, groomed to lead humanity into enlightenment. And yet, he rejected it. But his rejection of systems didn't come without consequences. From allegations of personal entanglements to legal battles and critiques of his enlightenment claims.
There is no such thing as enlightenment. They cannot talk of love, compassion at all.
By the end of this video, you'll learn why, despite the controversies and criticisms, there will never be another radical philosopher like J. Krishnamurti. But if you turn away now, you'll miss how one man challenged the very foundation of spiritual institutions and revealed a path to break free from the mental cage we build for ourselves. What if the chosen savior of humanity turned his back on the very idea of salvation itself? On the shores of India, a 14-year-old boy named Jiddu Krishnamurti is discovered by Charles Webster Leadbeater, a prominent member of the Theosophical Society. Leadbeater and Annie Besant, the society's leader, believed they found someone extraordinary. In their eyes, Krishnamurti wasn't just a gifted child, he was the physical vessel for the Maitreya, a messianic figure prophesied to lead humanity into spiritual awakening.
The Theosophical Society decided to announce to the world that he is the world teacher. The perfect teacher has come.
But it wasn't easy after Krishnamurti's discovery. His father, Narayana, objected to the removal of his sons, Krishnamurti and his younger brother, Nityanand, from his care. Narayana even filed legal action, accusing Besant of essentially kidnapping his sons under the guise of their spiritual potential. Besant ultimately won the custody in 1914, but not without significant personal and organizational strain. After that, Krishnamurti's training began immediately. He was whisked away from his humble beginnings, schooled in Western philosophy and spirituality, and groomed to become the world teacher. In 1911, the Theosophical Society established the Order of the Star, an organization with members worldwide, dedicated to spreading his future teachings. But amidst this grand vision, a personal tragedy struck. In 1925, Krishnamurti's beloved younger brother, Nityanand, passed away. This loss devastated him, shaking his faith in the very structure that had raised him. For Krishnamurti, it was not just a loss of a sibling, but a confrontation with the fragility of human constructs and promises. And in 1929, at the height of his fame, Krishnamurti walked up to a podium in Almen, Netherlands, in front of thousands of followers. He dissolved the Order of the Star.
I maintain that truth is a pathless land and cannot be approached by any path whatsoever, by any religion, by any sect.
He rejected not just the order, but the entire idea of organized religion, hierarchies, and spiritual leaders. No intermediaries between you and the truth. This moment wasn't just the end of the society's dream, it was the beginning of Krishnamurti's true journey. What happens when a man who teaches self-liberation and detachment finds himself entangled in scandal, betrayal, and contradiction? Can a flawed life still produce timeless wisdom? For a man who preached self-liberation and personal integrity, Krishnamurti's personal life was complicated. He often spoke of the importance of celibacy, arguing that desire and attachment were barriers to freedom. Yet, he allegedly engaged in a decades-long affair with Rosalind Rajagopal, the wife of his close associate, D. Rajagopal. The relationship reportedly led to 3 terminated pregnancies and caused significant personal strife, preaching detachment while engaging in deeply emotional entanglements. Was it hypocrisy, or simply the human side of a man who never claimed to be perfect? There was another controversy with financial disputes. For years, D. Rajagopal managed Krishnamurti's finances, but their relationship soured in the 1960s over allegations of financial mismanagement and control over Krishnamurti's assets. The conflict escalated into lawsuits that lasted more than a decade. These legal battles exposed an uglier side of Krishnamurti's circle, one filled with power struggles and betrayal. But the contradictions don't end there. Despite rejecting organized institutions, Krishnamurti maintained a loyal following. He publicly criticized nationalism and group identity, yet he lived in relative luxury provided by his supporters, an irony that didn't escape his critics. Do these personal flaws discredit his philosophy? Or do they make his teachings more relatable? After all, isn't the struggle to reconcile ideals with reality something we all face? It's these contradictions that make Krishnamurti such a polarizing figure. He wasn't a saint. He wasn't trying to be. And maybe that's the point. What if the greatest obstacle to truth was the very act of seeking it? Krishnamurti's philosophy wasn't just a rejection of systems, it was a revolution against the way we think, live, and follow. He often said, "The moment you follow someone, you cease to follow the truth." In a world obsessed with role models, systems, and hacks for success, Krishnamurti stood out as an outlier. At a time when religious and spiritual movements were seen as the only way to enlightenment, Krishnamurti argued that any path, no matter how noble, was a trap. Following a path, he said, meant imitating others, and imitation was the death of freedom. But it wasn't that easy to challenge centuries of tradition. His ideas were radical, but they often faced fierce resistance. For minds conditioned by beliefs and systems, the path of self-inquiry was a daunting and uncomfortable journey. To Krishnamurti, the only way to discover truth was through direct observation and self-inquiry. He believed that every individual was capable of uncovering the nature of reality without the need for a teacher, a guru, or a method. But think about how radical that is. Even the most progressive philosophies often come with systems or practices. Krishnamurti rejected all of it. He even condemned nationalism, calling it a source of division and violence. When you call yourself an Indian, or a Muslim, or a Christian, or a European, or anything else, you are being violent, he said, because you are separating yourself from the rest of mankind. His stance was a direct challenge to the political and social structures of his time, many of which relied on identity and allegiance. Krishnamurti also spoke about freedom, not the kind promised by governments or ideologies, but a psychological freedom. To him, true freedom was the ability to observe life without the distortions of fear, desire, or conditioning. He often said, "The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence." This idea, known as choiceless awareness, became one of his most defining concepts.
Do you observe it, aware of it, without any choice, without any desire, just to observe the extraordinary beauty of the land?
It wasn't about achieving a state of calm or practicing mindfulness in the traditional sense. It was about shedding all preconceptions and seeing life as it truly is. What happens when the man who tore down the idea of gurus ended up becoming one? He preached freedom, yet his followers couldn't let him go, turning him into the very thing he warned against. In one encounter with Laura Huxley, she asked why he criticized gurus and teachers on one hand, yet seemed to do the same thing on the other. His response?
And I said, "What do you think you are doing?" And his answer was so delightful. He said, "Oh, but I don't do it on purpose."
A statement both profound and perplexing. Even after Krishnamurti dissolved the Order of the Star, many of his followers left, unable to reconcile his actions with their expectations. As Laura Huxley pointed out, his words and actions seemed paradoxical, criticizing gurus while inadvertently becoming one himself. But a core group remained, clinging to his words as if they were gospel. His inner circle, individuals like Mary Lutyens, who wrote his biography, and Rajagopal Sloss, who managed much of his estate, were often so loyal they overlooked his contradictions. Even Krishnamurti seemed aware of this irony. He once said, "You can't depend on anyone. There is only you, your relationship with others, and with the world." And yet, when he spoke, his charisma was undeniable. Audiences sat spellbound, absorbing every word. It's no surprise that critics like Jiddu Krishnamurti, a former follower, accused him of fostering the very dependence he warned against.
Whatever you are doing to practice or trying to drop it, both are the same. They're practice.
It's a paradox we see time and time again with radical thinkers. The message is revolutionary, but the human need for structure and leadership turns it into, well, another system. It's almost as if we can't help ourselves. We want freedom, but only if someone else shows us how to get to it. But what happens when two brilliant minds, one rooted in science, the other in spirituality, collide? Krishnamurti's partnership with David Bohm promised to redefine human understanding, but it ended in heartbreak and questions that linger to this day. Bohm was deeply interested in the nature of consciousness, and when he met Krishnamurti in the 1960s, the two began a profound dialogue. Their conversations bridged the gap between science and spirituality, exploring questions like, what is the root of human suffering? Can the mind be free of conflict? For years, their partnership was productive, yielding groundbreaking discussions that were later published in books like The Ending of Time. But as time went on, cracks began to form. Bohm grew frustrated with Krishnamurti's dismissal of scientific inquiry, while Krishnamurti felt Bohm was too rigid in his thinking. The final blow came when Krishnamurti allegedly dismissed Bohm's depression as a lack of self-awareness, a comment that deeply hurt the physicist. It's a pattern we see throughout his life: deep connections followed by dramatic ruptures. So were Krishnamurti's so-called enlightenment experiences genuine, or were they exaggerated? These episodes, known as the process, were said to mark his divine connection, but they also fueled debates and controversies. Skeptics, including Osho, argue that these experiences were exaggerated or even fabricated to maintain his mystique.
I admire one man, Jiddu Krishnamurti. I admire him, but that does not mean that I agree with him.
Even his harshest critic, Jiddu Krishnamurti, no relation, dismissed these claims as a joke, accusing Jiddu of recycling ambiguous concepts.
They have come up with this technique or teaching or whatever you want to call it, fooling you.
Such critiques only added to the enigmatic aura surrounding him. Jiddu Krishnamurti openly criticized Jiddu, calling his enlightenment claims a joke. He argued that Krishnamurti's philosophy was nothing more than recycled concepts wrapped in ambiguity. But let's flip the script for a moment. Even if his enlightenment wasn't literal, does it matter? Krishnamurti himself never claimed to be a prophet or Messiah. In fact, he consistently rejected labels and insisted that his experiences were irrelevant to anyone else's journey. What mattered, he said, was not his truth, but yours. So are we too focused on the messenger? And if so, are we missing the message entirely? Over the course of his life, Krishnamurti gave over 60 years of public talks, wrote dozens of books, and inspired countless individuals. From everyday seekers to intellectual giants like Aldous Huxley and Henry Miller, his emphasis on self-inquiry and philosophical freedom transcended spirituality, leaving an indelible mark on education, psychology, and even politics. But what truly sets Krishnamurti apart is the challenge he left us with, to think for ourselves. In a world hungry for answers, he offered questions. In a society seeking leaders, he urged independence. So will there ever be another radical philosopher like Jiddu Krishnamurti? Probably not. Because while many thinkers inspire change, few dismantle the very idea of dependence as profoundly as he did. Krishnamurti didn't want followers. He wanted us to think for ourselves. And that, perhaps, is the most radical idea of all. And with that, let's end today's video. So, do you think we'll ever see another philosopher who breaks the mold like he did? Or has the world moved on from this kind of radical thought? Drop your comments below. Before you go, don't forget to check out my recent video.